The title of my presentation is Combusted Cigarettes versus Heated Tobacco Products, Comparison from the point of view of particulate matter emission and soluble matter. As we all know, there are a number of health problems related to cigarette smoke, which have led to the promotion of measures for smoking cessation. For those who cannot quit smoking, the design of tobacco-related products with less or non-harmful effect, such as heated tobacco products or HTPs, is a valid alternative. Considering this, a question that needs to be answered, supported by independent studies, is the following. Are heated tobacco products less harmful than regular cigarettes? Thus, our research aims to compare combusted cigarettes with HTPs, and with such purpose, an experimental setup has been designed and optimized to simulate puffing and to collect in water any particulate matter or water-soluble compound. Such comparison, combusted cigarettes versus HTPs, is of great relevance, and in the last years, several studies have focused on the analysis of cigarettes and heats, paying special attention to any particulate matter generated. In the previously mentioned published studies, such particulate matter is usually collected from the aerosol phase, and in the present independent study, we propose to focus on the collection in water media and the characterization of any particulate matter and soluble compound. Note that this collection way resembles the interaction between the aerosols and water-rich media occurring in biological tissues. The present slide shows a scheme of the designed experimental setup, which has been optimized to fit the Health Canada intense puffing regime. Using this setup, 15 cigarettes have been smoked with puffing and compared with the use of 15 HTPs. In terms of particle matter and soluble compounds collected in water, as aerosols bubble through it. See the water media in the gas washing flask. Detailed information about the design setup and the collection procedure appear in a recently published paper, whose reference is included in the slide. So, this setup has been used for doing experiments based on smoking 15 cigarettes or using 15 heats, which are the HTPs developed by Philip Morris Products. In these experiments, the aerosol generated when smoking passes through the water contained in the gas washing flask. Those water samples have been collected, and the present slide shows pictures from both experiments, with cigarettes, top photograph, and with heats, bottom one. From them, the difference in color can be clearly observed. Taking into account that one of the main aims of this research is to analyze any particulate matter in the aerosol from cigarettes or heats, in some particular cases, the washing flask has been filled not with water but with isopropanol. Why to use an organic media? Because this way, if the particulate matter generated has an organic nature, as expected, we could have some additional information. These two highlighted pictures correspond to isopropanol media from cigarette experiments, top image, and HITS experiments, bottom image. And it can be clearly observed again, even more, the difference between the color of the isopropanol when cigarettes are smoked in comparison with the use of HITS. These pictures mainly show the color, but if the solutions are observed from close distance, in the case of samples from cigarette experiments, solid particles can be visually distinguished. Let's start with the results section, with data from laser diffraction characterization, a technique used to confirm or discard the presence of solid particles and to characterize the particle size distribution. Water samples from cigarettes or HITS were analyzed. Particles were detected in all cigarette samples analyzed. An example of the distributions obtained is presented in the slide. In contrast, particles were not detected in HITS samples. Only in some portions of HITS samples, some low-intensity signal was observed, in the range of the detection limit of the equipment. Transmission electron microscopy has also been used as a technique to analyze any particulate matter in the water media. The left images, C1 and C2, correspond to samples from cigarettes, and the right images, H1 and H2, to samples from HITS. For cigarettes, a lot of particulate matter is observed, in form of homogeneous spherical structures. The corresponding size distribution is shown as well. In contrast, this does not occur for HITS samples. H1 is a representative image for HITS. During transmission electron microscopy analysis, it is very difficult to find areas where any particulate matter can be observed in HITS samples. Just after a thorough search, some solid particles can be found, such as in image H2. Determination of the total organic carbon content in water samples from the two types of experiments with cigarettes and HITS has been done to have some information about the content of organic carbon and hence about the soluble matter. The data presented clearly shows that TOC values from experiments with cigarettes are much higher than from experiments with HITS, which means much higher content of soluble compounds in cigarette samples. UVVs has been used as a technique to provide information of the presence and concentration of organic compounds in the liquid media, either water or isopropanol, from experiments with cigarettes or HITS. In the case of cigarettes, the solutions are so concentrated that only after dilution they can be measured. That is why in the two series of the large graph, those corresponding to cigarettes, the initials DF from dilution factor appear. This does not occur for HITS, being this a first indication of the much higher soluble compounds concentration in cigarette samples. After recalculation, so that a direct comparison of the series can be done, the small right graph clearly shows that very low concentration of soluble compounds is present in HITS samples. So, finally, we would like to highlight that cigarette smoke contains solid particles generated during combustion, as it has been experimentally observed. In contrast, the presence of particulate matter in aerosol from HTPs is negligible and not related to combustion. A much higher amount of compounds dissolved in water is present for cigarettes in comparison with heats, and all these observations together let us conclude that HTPs are less harmful than combusted cigarettes.